You've found the next chapter of the Iron Rebel, a military sci-fi saga of war, exile, and political deception. If that sounds like your kind of story, hit subscribe and give this video a like. It helps the story reach new rebels like you. Chapter 13. The Nexus Gambit. Governor Marcus Trenholm was the kind of man history buried beneath footnotes, if it bothered to mention him at all. But for the people of Eris Nexus, he was an empire wrapped in skin. Fat with stolen credits and smug in his fortress of steel and glass, Trenholm ruled the mining colony like a bloated god. His authority didn't stretch past the atmosphere, but on the ground his word was law. Overseers kept the miners in line with ration cuts and broken teeth. Those who stepped out of line vanished into tunnels no one dared revisit. Kane saw it in their eyes first, what Dralith later called pressure with nowhere to go. Miners with dirt in their lungs and fire in their chests. Men and women who woke every day knowing the system was killing them and yet still got up anyway. They worked not because they believed in what they served, but because there was no visible alternative. Only deeper shafts, only longer hours. "We don't need soldiers," Dralith had said in the beginning, sitting half in shadow, boots coated in soot. "We need people with nothing left to lose." And Eris Nexus had plenty of those. They built their army in whispers. Met in collapsed shafts and storage rooms sealed behind slagged door codes. They trained with rusted rifles and stripped-down mining lasers. They ran drills under the pretense of tunnel reinforcement and smuggled contraband tech through old rail lines. But it wasn't the weapons that made them dangerous. It was the desperation, the discipline, the belief that something better might finally be worth fighting for. In the dim cavern they called a war room, Dralith laid out the map like a man drawing battle lines on a corpse. "The overseers hold 3 things, food, weapons and comms," he said, tapping a scarred finger across sectors already pocked with red. "Control those, we win. And trust me, they aren't loyal to Trenholm. They're loyal to survival. Show them which side keeps them breathing, they'll fall in line." Kane nodded. Arms crossed, boots braced, voice low. "Then we sever their voice first. They can't scream for help if we take their throat." Dawn came hard. Kane's strike team hit the comms array first. He moved through dark corridors like a man walking old roads. Silent. Unforgiving. He bypassed security like it was a riddle already solved, feeding a virus into the mainframe that turned every warning beacon into silence. From above, it looked like nothing had changed. But the colony's voice had gone dead. At the same time, Dralith brought fire. The miners hit the supply depots with precision, coordinated, ruthless. They overwhelmed the guards in minutes, flooding the warehouses with men and women who had once begged for extra rations and now kicked down doors. Crates of weapons were seized. Food stores redistributed. Overseers beaten, captured, or offered a choice, kneel or disappear. Trenholm did what men like him always did when the ground started cracking. He barricaded himself in his compound, screaming orders at subordinates who had already fled. He demanded loyalty from people who'd been sharpening knives behind his back for years. But loyalty didn't survive starvation. And fear only worked when it had teeth. By nightfall, the battle was over. Trenholm was dragged out in his bedclothes, blustering and red-faced, spitting at the crowd like they still owed him something. But no one flinched. Not this time. They brought him to the plaza, if you could call it that, a broken clearing between fuel tanks and a mess hall turned triage center. The crowd gathered, not because they were told to, but because they needed to see it. Kane stood on the steps of the old administration building, the dead comms tower still crackling behind him like a toppled antenna. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice cut through the smoke and noise like flint through dry wool. "Eris Nexus belongs to its people now." His voice echoed off steel and stone. "No more overseers. No more governors fattening themselves while you choke on coal dust. No more fear." The miners roared. The sound was raw, human, like a planet exhaling for the first time in a generation. Dralith stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon. Always watching for the next war. Even in victory, He never stood still in his mind. Not really. Something in him kept marching. Among the crates of plundered supplies were half a dozen transport freighters, old, patched, barely held together with weld lines and hope. But they would fly. And that was enough. They named the first one Ashwake, the second Reckoner. Within days, one half of the colony went back to mining, just enough to keep the Confederation fooled. They'd keep the shipments moving, the quotas close enough, the sensors reading steady. The other half? They built. Ships. Weapons. A future. It was a quiet rebellion. But it was real. In the tunnels, old men taught kids how to gut a circuit board. Engineers turned bulk freighters into armored corvettes. Wives and husbands loaded weapons while their children stacked fuel cells. It wasn't glorious. It wasn't clean. But it was theirs. Kane knew what would come. The Confederation wouldn't ignore the silence forever. But for now, Eris Nexus had slipped the leash and built something from its broken bones. He and Dralith stood on a high ledge overlooking the cavern hangar as the Ashwake powered up for its first launch. The engines whined like awakening beasts, lights flickering on one by one in the dark. Dralith said nothing. Just watched the lights come on like stars being born. Kane folded his arms, voice low. "We lit a match in the dark." Dralith nodded, the faintest ghost of a grin on his scarred face. "Now we see who comes to the fire." The war hadn't begun yet. But the first shot had been fired. And it came from below. This chapter of the Iron Rebel comes to a close. But the war is far from over. If the story spoke to you, leave a like. It fuels the rebellion. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. New episodes drop every week. Until next time, stay sharp, stay defiant.